Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name's Michela. I am your host. And I'm really excited about today's episode because we are going to be going through some habits, routines, systems, etc. that I have implemented all throughout my 20s that I personally think have made me as successful as I am. And obviously success is subjective, right? But I personally feel, financially, professionally, and personally successful in my own life. And so I'm just going to share all the things that I've done to really feel that way about myself, because I think getting to a point where you feel good about your life and like the direction your life is moving in and all of the things that you've accomplished should be the goal of your 20s, like by the time that you turn 30. Before we get into all of it, I'm going to run through our usual housekeeping. So first things first, I have launched a brand new budgeting template. So if you are someone who is looking for really like a starter tool for your budget, because I got a lot of feedback that the personal finance dashboard is a little bit too much for some people. This new template, it's called the basic budgeting template. And that is what it is. It is a straightforward basic budgeting template to really start dipping your toes into the world of budgeting. It's much more straightforward than the PFD. Obviously, you're not going to be getting the same level of insights and like information as you would be getting from the PFD, because the PFD, which is the personal finance dashboard, if you're new here, is basically my full comprehensive financial planning tool. This basic budgeting template is really just like the monthly budgeting aspect of it all. So you can put together your first budget. You'll follow my zero-based 3-bucket budget system. So you'll learn how to do that with this budgeting template. And you get some basic insights to help you just make some better decisions. It's a really great template to use, again, if you are getting started with budgeting. And then ultimately, if you decide that you want to upgrade to the PFD, you can do that as well. Next is my Don't Depend on Daddy rebrand. So I'm going through the process of rebranding the Don't Depend on Daddy Instagram to be more of like my personal lifestyle brand. So if you are interested in seeing more lifestyle content from me, make sure you're following the Don't Depend on Daddy Instagram. I am ultimately going to be changing that to be my first name. But in the meantime, come join the fun over there, because I post every day on that channel, just in the same way that I'm posting every day on Break Your Budget. So yeah, come over there because I'm having fun with that. And as always, the last thing here is that the personal finance dashboard, which as I mentioned is sort of my like comprehensive signature financial planning money management tool, you can use the code podcast1 for $10 off, always and forever. That is a podcast exclusive code. So if you're looking to get your hands on the personal finance dashboard, make sure you use that code so you can get a little bit of money off. All of the information about both budgeting templates, the basic budgeting template and the personal finance dashboard, is always in the show notes, and there are video tours of both. So you can decide which one makes more sense for you, depending on what you're currently looking for. Obviously, the personal finance dashboard is going to be a little bit more expensive because it is a full comprehensive tool. And the basic budgeting template is a little bit less expensive because you're not getting as much from that. It's more of, again, like I mentioned, that basic first step on your financial journey. So with all of that in mind, let's move on past the housekeeping. Thanks for listening. Now we're going to be getting into the habits, routines, and systems that I have been following that I feel like have made me successful all throughout my 20s. And basically this stems from the fact that I am turning 30 later this year. And I remember in my early 20s, when I look back with hindsight, I felt really, really lost and honestly distraught over how people figured out life. Like I remember having so many phone calls with my dad when I was on my lunch break at work, like so confused on how was I ever going to make more money? How was I ever going to do all of the things that I wanted to do in this job that I was in? And ultimately, a big catalyst of that was being young, because I think when you're young, and I mean, I'm still young, but when you're 22, like you really are just a baby. Like you don't know anything about life at that point. So first, I was young. And second, I didn't have information, I feel like, on how people grew and evolved. And I feel like now, younger 20-year-olds, so people in their early 20s with TikTok, like you just have access to so much more information. So hopefully me sharing this, especially if you are in your early 20s, is helpful. But I do think everything that I'm going to be sharing is applicable whether you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever, because all the stuff that I'm talking about, I mean, I'm 29, it's all stuff that I still do, and it's all stuff that I will be continuing to do. Throughout my 20s, I spent a lot of time alone. And I think that that has really helped me develop as a person overall and not just figure out who I am, but who I want to be and how I want to act. So, like, these are also all things that the best version of myself does. All of this has truly led to developing habits that just overarchingly make my life better. And I feel like following these habits for longer periods of time have ultimately compounded over the last like 5 to 10-ish years. So as I mentioned, I turned 30 in July, which honestly, I feel like the day I turn 30, I'm going to breathe a sigh of relief just because at 29, I think 29 is the worst age. Because everybody says that too, but it's just such an awkward age. And while there are things about my life that I hope change, like I'd like to get married, I'm actively working to change them, so like I'm still taking the steps to do that. And whether, I'm not going to get married before I turn 30 because that's so soon, but like no matter what or where I am on the day that I turn 30, I know that I'm going to be able to look back at my 20s and be really proud of everything that I've done and everything that I've become. And if you're in your 20s, that ultimately should be your goal. I have done so much throughout my 20s, from moving cross country twice, making new friends, quitting my job. I wrote 2 books. Soon I will officially be a millionaire, which I'm very excited about. And that was my big net worth goal before I turned 30, was to have a 7-figure net worth, which I actually think I'm going to hit like way before I turn 30, which is fabulous. And honestly, all of this has just been a result of working on myself and making regular decisions on a daily basis to make my life better from every aspect. And it's been hard. It's been a long journey. 10 years, a full decade is a long time. But I will say it has been super worth it. So like all the trials and tribulations I feel like I've experienced throughout my 20s, all of the self-work and self-development and hard times and uncomfortable periods have all been so worth it, because now I feel like I'm going into my 30s and like I'm feeling really good, and I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling optimistic about my future. And I know that kind of no matter what happens, like I'm good because I'm good with myself. And that all boils back to the premise of this entire podcast, which is finding your personal independence and really learning how to be your own best friend and rely on yourself. And that's not to say that you can't have, emotional relationships with people or rely on people emotionally. But really what it means is that at your core, no matter what happens in your life, you're good on your own. And I feel that way going into my 30s. So anyways, I'm going to share today 5 of the most important, again, habits, systems, routines, because it kind of runs the gamut of all of those things that I've done in my 20s to become this best version of me. And they're all habits and routines, etc., that I've stuck to for years and would recommend that you find a way to adapt into your own life. And what I've done here to keep things organized is I've broken them up into 5 key categories. So money, career, appearance, health, wellness, and personal relationships. And I have a few like quick bonus things at the end too that are just like overarching themes and lessons that I feel like you learn in your late 20s, but if you can learn them and internalize them in your early 20s, like your life is just going to feel better, in my opinion. And yeah, with that, let's get into it. So following these key categories, we'll start with money because I feel like this is the most obvious and I just kind of want to get it out of the way because I've talked about it a lot across various podcast episodes. But this really boils back to financial routines and the value and importance of having financial routines because they do have an enormous impact on your long-term success. Financial routines at their core are are what is going to ground you financially. They're what is going to keep you financially agile. They're what's going to keep you on track. They're what's going to ensure that you actually are making progress towards your financial goals. They're going to make you aware of how you're spending your money. And ultimately, they are going to be what ends up guiding your financial direction. And I always get asked, how do I stick to a budget? What do I do? And you stick to a budget through financial routines, because this is how you hold yourself accountable. And ultimately, accountability is ownership. So you own your money. You have to be taking the steps to really, really make sure that you are sticking to the goals and the promises that you set for yourself when it comes to your finances. So there are two key financial routines that I have been following and implementing since I was 24. So 24 was kind of when I started to get my financials in order. But I would say 24 was the true catalyst. It's when I started Break Your Budget, when I was like, okay, like I'm doing this and I'm sticking to this. And so ever since then, I have followed a weekly money routine and a monthly money routine without fail. So every single week, we'll start with the weekly. What I do is I sit down for 10 or 15 minutes. I pull up my personal finance dashboard, because that's the tool that I choose to use. And I pull up my credit card statement and I manually track my expenses. I now do this live on my Inner Circle group. So if you are interested in joining the Inner Circle, leave a comment or send me an email and I'll send you the link. The reason why I don't post that link publicly is because I don't want people to join who are not actually going to show up. So if you are someone who is interested in additional accountability, collaboration, a place to track your finances where everyone else is also tracking their finances, I'd love to have you in the Inner Circle. It's $10 a month and we meet every Monday. And so basically we sit down, I pull up my tool on my credit card and I track my expenses manually. Once I've done that, I look at the numbers and I self-reflect on what's going on. Are there areas where I'm over, areas where I'm under? Are there areas where I need to adjust? And that sort of leads into step number 3, which is making those adjustments. So let's say, this month when I'm filming this in January, I was double my grocery budget. And, I kind of saw that trend all throughout the month. So every week I kind of plus that up and I pulled some stuff back and I made those adjustments because I knew getting settled in a new apartment, I'm stocking up my pantry, I'm going to be spending more on groceries. And so now I know going forward how to inform my budget for future months. So that's just one example. But basically, the purpose of the weekly money routine is to see how much you've spent so far, see how that fits within the context of your budget, and adjust as you need to, because what you think is going to happen at the beginning of the month and what actually happens at the end of the month are two different things. And if you're not adjusting throughout the month, then that is why people feel like they can't stick to a budget or their budget is a failure. Just because something doesn't go exactly to plan doesn't mean you need to give it all up. It just means that you need to make probably some slight tweaks or adjustments, which is really easy to do if you're looking at your finances every single week. The second money routine is my monthly money routine. And this is a little bit longer. So I would say it's like 30 to 45 minutes. Also something that we do in the Inner Circle together. And basically this is an elaborated version of the weekly money routine. So I'll sit down and I will update all of my numbers. So I'm looking at what I spent for the month. I'm tracking any investment or savings contributions. If you're paying down debt, any payments that you're making towards debt. And also updating your net worth, which is really, really, really important to do. I update my net worth once per month because I like to see just that one monthly snapshot. Once I've updated all of my numbers, which again, I do using the personal finance dashboard, I will look at my monthly insights and I will see how I tracked against my plan for the full month. I'll see how much I spent, how much I earned, how much I put towards savings, how much I put towards investments, where was I over, where was I under. I'll ask myself some questions like, did I reach my goals this month? How do I feel about my spending? How do I feel about my saving? Were there things that I could have done differently? Was there anything that was outside of my control that impacted my spending? Were there things that I didn't account for? And then I will build out my budget for the next month using that information. So I actually have a baseline budget. And again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I do all of this in the PFD because it's specifically designed to help you go through all of these processes and implement that accountability into your life. But I have a baseline budget that I forecast out for the full year. The tool does it automatically. And then I will look at, my results for the current month. and I'll go and think forward to the next month. So for example, February is a little bit of a shorter month. So sometimes my spending looks a little bit different on short months versus long months. It's also a winter month, so I'm not doing as much. Like, think about if you have travel plans or anything of that sort. And I'll adjust my baseline budget based off of plans I have going on or things that I discovered in my prior month's budget that need to be built into this next month's budget. These financial routines, I can say with certainty, will change your life. So if you are any age, because I always get age discrimination when I talk about just being in your 20s. The reason why I say in my 20s or in your 20s is because I'm in my 20s. When I turn 30, like I'm going to say 20s and 30s. Like it doesn't really matter how old you are. What matters is that you do it. So whether you're starting this at 22 or you're 35 and you're just getting your finances in order, the advice is the same. Follow a weekly money routine and make sure you're doing a monthly money retrospective. And if you need help, I obviously have tons of resources all across my Instagram, and I have podcast episodes where I talk about these money routines, so you can go back and listen to those, or you can come join the inner circle and you can do it with me. Moving on to the second category here, which is career. So there are two things that I've done for my career in terms of like systems and habits, routines that I feel like have made a difference. One was during corporate and one is now as a self-employed person. So I'll start with corporate because I know a lot of you who listen to this are in a corporate job. And I've said this before, so I'm going to say it again. But the biggest, most impactful thing I did when I was working a corporate job was I started task tracking. And task tracking often gets misconstrued for being something that you are doing for your employer or for your manager. And that is not what it is at all. And that is completely missing the mark. Task tracking is something that you do for yourself. Think of it as like your personal brag sheet. And basically, it's just a weekly system, framework really, where you are listing out like your top 5 to 10 weekly tasks, projects, priorities. And for each of those things that you are doing that week, you are also attaching a value add. A value add is the impact of you doing or completing that task. The impact is what happens after the task is completed. So you're handing it off. Is it benefiting somebody that you're working with? Is it benefiting the company? Is there a direct impact on ROI, sales, a specific number that you can quantify? If the answer to all of those is no, then think about, is there a direct benefit to my personal skill development by doing this? If the answer to that is yes, fill that in. And if it isn't, then you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this task? And really going through this process week after week after week does a couple of things. One, it helps you curate a brag list of accomplishments that you can use during important career conversations, so your performance review, interviews, on your resume. But two, just like I said, it helps you curate a list of everything that you've done in your job that you can then use to build your resume when you're looking for a new job and to build up what I call an interview Rolodex, which is basically like a repository for all of your interview questions and examples to answer interview questions. So when you're looking for your next job, you have tons of stuff that you can use and you can actually nail your interview. The other layers of task tracking are keeping track of any unexpected or unplanned asks that come up. So are people asking you for favors? And also keeping track of who is asking you for favors. So when, performance conversations come around, you have to ask for feedback. You have a list of like, okay, I helped all of these people. So now I'm going to ask them and they're going to give me good feedback for my performance review so that I can get promoted, get a raise, get accolades, whatever. The last layer of task tracking is every week spending 5 minutes or 10 minutes to list out your top 1 to 5 accomplishments from the week. And they can be big or small. It could be, I just finished everything I needed to do this week. I submitted a project. I led a presentation. All of these things, again, are really important for curating your resume and ultimately your career story, having examples to use in interviews, because the things you're doing at work might feel small, but they all ladder up to like the bigger overarching picture. And if you don't keep track of them, you will forget them because you do a lot of stuff at work. And this is why when you're going to update your resume, it's like, okay, what did I do? What am I putting here? It's because you don't have a place to go back to reference. Also, it's proof. When you're in a performance conversation, you can never get, sidetracked or sidelined or told that you didn't do something because you literally have the proof written down. You can go back to your email, you can find it. It's all in one place. So I highly recommend that you task track in your 20s if you're working a corporate job. You can be as detailed or as high level as you want, but getting pen to paper every week and being organized and following a specific framework is going to make a difference in how confident you feel advocating for yourself and also, selling yourself during the job application and job search process. Confidence is everything at work, so this is going to help you build confidence. If you're looking for a tool to help you do that, I recommend you check out my Own Your Career template, which is always linked in the show notes. And I also recommend that you read my book, Own Your Career. There's a whole chapter on this. It's called Playing the Corporate Game. I believe it's chapter 5. It's either chapter 5 or chapter 6. And it basically goes through how you can create a task management system to specifically use to advocate for yourself and ultimately own your career, which is a big theme that I talk about a lot. I haven't talked about it a lot in January because January I feel like is a very finance focused month, but going forward, we're going to be bringing back some more of that career content. As a self-employed person, so Break Your Budget is a 7-figure business, not 7 figures annually, but over 7 figures in total. We're pushing 2, which is crazy. Anyways, I've done a lot in my business to really scale and be present and, make money selling digital products, to constantly have brand pipeline coming in. And there's 2 things that I've done here that have really helped. First is creating like a full weekly plan. So basically what I've done in Notion is I've created like a day over day task list. And it's very, very simple, but every day has a theme. So like, for example, Mondays are admin meeting days. Tuesdays are generally recording days. Wednesdays are like editing, catch-up days, project days. Thursdays are content days. Fridays is tying up all the loose ends. Having that specific theme and like kind of a set schedule, obviously it can and does change week over week, but that's generally the cadence that I'm following. Makes it so much easier for me to execute on the maintenance stuff, but also create space in my week for forward thinking, which is really, really important to grow a business instead of just keeping a business at a maintenance level. This is something I've struggled with, but it is a big focus of mine in 2025 is actual like growth and expansion, because the last few years, by no means has Break Your Budget stalled, but it's not like exponentially growing in the way that I want it to. And a big layer of that is just creating intentional time for new business ventures and ideas. So that is all done and like executed on for me in a template that I built myself in Notion, or like a template that I bought that I reiterated on myself, which is why a lot of people have asked me to create or sell my Notion template. I can't really, because it's a template that I bought that I just kind of customized for my own. It's from Jules Acree. I also bought the J. Klaus Creator HQ, which is something that I'm still working on building up. However, if you are a creator or you're looking to create content and you want to be on a lot of different platforms, what I've done specifically using this Creator HQ is established a content hour. And this is a system that I started back in, I would say, just about a year ago in the morning, but I've started to use Creator HQ to like organize it a little bit more. But basically, for the first hour of my day, it's my content hour, meaning that I'm either recording a video, editing a video, I'm posting my videos across all of my platforms. So right now, I post on Instagram, Break Your Budget Instagram, Don't Depend on Daddy Instagram, my Break Your Budget TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Story, Monday's YouTube video, Wednesday's podcast, Tuesday's email newsletter. So that's 10 big pieces of content, or like 10 places that I'm posting content throughout the week. And I post every day on TikTok, Break Your Budget Instagram, and now going forward, Don't Depend on Daddy Instagram. So it's a lot of content, but a lot of that is repurposed content or content that I'm cross-posting across platforms. So for example, with Break Your Budget, like I'm posting a video on Break Your Budget, that's the same videos getting posted on YouTube Shorts, and the same videos getting posted on TikTok. And yes, on TikTok, I'm creating specific TikTok unique content, but it's all part of this broader system where the topics are the same. It's just the type of video is a little bit different. And I organize all of that using Creator HQ, and I execute on it by basically every day of the week, I have a block almost. It's basically like a slide in the Creator HQ that has the platform that it's getting posted on, the status of the post, the script of the post, the caption of the post, like all of the details related to the post. And I go through and I hit publish. And that helps me keep everything organized, but it also helps ensure that I am remembering to post that content everywhere, every day. Because that's something that I struggled with a lot up until, again, the last year is you can be in a lot of places, but you have to remember to make sure that you're distributing the content in all of those places, which is something that I would, like YouTube Shorts, for example, like that shouldn't be an afterthought, but it was up until I started following this, content hour system. And so in that first hour of the day, I'm posting content, I'm recording a video for TikTok, I'm responding to comments, I'm responding to DMs on Instagram, I'm getting an Instagram story up if I'm posting one for that day. I'm taking my pictures for LTK to send over to my LTK team who is helping me build that up this year. Like that is what I'm doing the first hour, and then I can move on to like actual stuff. Not actual stuff, but just like more business focused stuff. So if you create content, I really recommend you follow some sort of content hour. It could be content 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be a full hour, but taking dedicated time where like you're doing your content and you're posting your content everywhere, because I feel like creators specifically forget that like content is the engine that keeps your business alive. So like just because you're growing in your creator business is not an excuse to forget to post your content or to stop posting good content. Like if anything, if you're making money from your content, like your content should be getting better, not worse. And I know it's hard. And like it's hard to come up with ideas and maintain that momentum, but it is really important to take seriously. And it's something that as I've grown in my business, I go through phases and like creative phases and whatnot. But as I've grown in my business, I've really made an effort to not let my content suffer. And I think compared to a lot of other creators, who have gotten much bigger than me, their content sucks. No offense. I'm not going to name any names. But like if your content is just you reposting 6-second videos of you doing nothing with text on the screen, like your content is bad. I don't know why that's what we're doing. But yeah. So if you're creating content, I really recommend that you follow a system like that. Anyways, let's move on because I don't want to say anything too mean. Moving on, we are going to get into appearance. So appearance is obviously not the most important thing, but it is something that I've noticed as I've begun to pay more attention to. It really does make me feel a lot better about myself. And if you feel good about yourself, you operate differently. And so as I've gotten a little bit older and in my late 20s, obviously I'm thinking about my skincare routine more. I'm thinking about the way that I present myself. I'm taking the extra 10 minutes to really focus on taking care of myself, putting myself together in the morning, and like really unwinding in the evening. And I do think that your appearance is something that you don't need to necessarily invest in all throughout your 20s, but you should take seriously throughout your 20s, because that is how you learn not only just like proper self-care so that you age nicely, but also your style and like what you like to wear and where you like to spend your money in terms of how you look, because everybody kind of likes to spend and focus on different things because everyone has different insecurities, different things they want to highlight, different things that they care about. For me, with my appearance, there's kind of 3 layers to this. First is my consistent skincare routine. I'm actually writing one down so that I don't forget. First is my consistent skincare routine. So this is more of a late 20s thing that I really nailed down, because my early to mid 20s, I did struggle with breakouts, and like I don't really have any acne anymore. And there are a few reasons why. First is just having a consistent skincare routine with consistent products that work on my skin and really learning what my skin type was. So I discovered that I had dry skin, and there are things that I need to do to my skin that do cause a little dryness. Like I use a benzoyl peroxide serum that I know makes my skin a little bit dry, but it also keeps my skin clear, so I don't really care. And I will add that moisture back into my skin through drinking water and also very hydrating products in the morning and the night. But having this consistent skincare routine is key. And second part of this consistent skincare routine is like skin cycling. So this is something that I learned, I would say 2 years ago, maybe, when I was really starting to take my skincare seriously. And it's basically where one night you exfoliate, the next night you use a retinoid, and the next night you go, bare and just do like moisture repair kind of thing. And I've followed this now for 2 years. And it was about 2 years ago now that I really started to clear up my skin. And ever since doing it, I have not had, knock on wood, any serious breakouts in the way that I had in my early 20s. So if you are in your early 20s and you want to take your skincare seriously, because I do feel like too, women go through almost like a second puberty. I know that that's not new, but like there's a point in your 20s where like you get acne or you struggle with something related to your skin. And I definitely experienced that. And the big things that I did were focus on my skincare routine. I went off birth control, which is a whole different conversation, but definitely something that I'm not advocating for if you are on birth control and you like it, but if you've been considering getting off of it, I recommend you do. There is a book to read, and now I'm forgetting it, so pardon me, but I'm actually going to look it up right now. And what is it called? Oh, okay. It's called Beyond the Pill, and it's by Dr. Jolene Brighton. I don't think she's a medical doctor. I think she's just like has a PhD maybe. But you should read it because that was the book that really opened my eyes to birth control, the side effects of birth control, and how birth control actually can make you crazy. And I do feel like it made me crazy and it ruined my skin. And so when I got off birth control, I still have anxiety, but not in the way that I used to. I also am not depressed and my skin is better. And I actually feel like more like myself. Like I really do think getting off birth control was a big thing for me and helped a lot with my appearance. I lost a little bit of weight. I felt more energized, whatever. Focusing on your hormone cycle and all that kind of stuff is really helpful. And it can have a big impact on your skin. So, food for thought. That is not something I was planning to share in this episode, but now that I, talk about it and think about it, I do think it is something that did make a big difference in my skincare and just like my overall appearance in my 20s. The other layer of appearance is style and really figuring out what my style is. I mean, style is an evolution all throughout your 20s, but I'm really happy because in my early 20s, I don't really feel like I focused on this. And I actually recently made a TikTok about it, how I'm really happy that in my early 20s, I wasn't super focused on style, purely because I think that, especially, again, as a woman, like your style evolves dramatically from your early 20s to your late 20s. And after you turn 25 and like your brain is fully developed, something clicks and you're like, I don't want to dress like that anymore. And so I'm happy that I didn't focus on style early in my 20s because I do feel like then I would have spent money on clothes that ultimately were not like long-term clothes, if that makes sense. And now in my later 20s, I've really focused on figuring out what I feel most comfortable in. So what I feel most comfortable in is like jeans and a t-shirt, jeans and a long sleeve, jeans and a sweater. Like I'm a pants girl. That I discovered a long time ago, and I built my wardrobe kind of around that. I'd say over the last year is really when I started to think about elevating my style, taking my style to the next level. And so the more recent system I've implemented that if you're younger than me, I recommend you just start doing is getting dressed every day, wearing your clothes every day, and figuring out what you're reaching for and what you wish you had, because then that helps you identify those wardrobe gaps. So in terms of like habit system routines for style, it's getting dressed every day. And it's really honing in and focusing on what are the clothes that you find you're putting on the most and kind of tuning out like style inspo on social media. Because I do feel like I always feel uncomfortable sharing. I'm doing it anyways, but I always feel uncomfortable sharing my style videos or like what I'm wearing videos on social media because I don't really care necessarily for like super high fashion, trendy fashion necessarily. Like I'm never going to over style or over accessorize, which I feel like is what we see a lot of on Instagram and TikTok of like fashion influencers and the girls who are always dressed. Like they're just constantly, in my opinion, over styling everything. And I'm not saying they look bad because they all look great, but like that's just not really what I'm doing or what my style is going to be. And that's okay because I know that there is a niche and an audience for people who are similar to me where like, yes, I want to look nice and put together, but I don't need to be like dressed to the nines every single day. And I just don't want to have tons of jewelry and accessories and all this kind of stuff. Like I want to have a few things that I wear all the time. Anyways, get dressed every day and figure out what you like. And the way that I've held myself accountable to that this year, at least, is I've begun, recording recording my outfits and posting those videos online. So yeah, appearance I think is really important to focus on all throughout your 20s, but skincare is the biggest one. Style, I would say second. I do think too that figuring out like a 5-minute makeup routine is also key. My 5-minute makeup, which is what I'm wearing right now, is kind of like a no makeup, but still a little bit of makeup. I wear a tinted moisturizer, a tinted sunscreen from Paula's Choice, a concealer under my eyes, a blush or a bronzer. Right now I'm wearing the Bare Minerals Blonzer. Great. I forget the shade, but I'll make sure it's on my LTK somewhere. A little eyebrow and a touch of brown mascara. That's my 5-minute makeup. It's really like a 2-minute makeup. Nailing your 5-minute makeup in your 20s, I think, is essential, because going into your 30s, like, you should know how to put yourself together. Moving on to number 4, this is health and wellness. So there are 3 things that I've done in the health and wellness world consistently all throughout my 20s that I think have made a big difference. First is having a weekly exercise routine. And I did this pre-COVID, I did this during COVID, and I've done this post-COVID, but it's sort of evolved. So that is having 3 like strength sessions per week. Before COVID, when I lived in Boston, I went to this gym called HealthWorks in the Back Bay. And every week I would take a body pump class, and they also had like a HIIT strength conditioning class that I would take 2 times a week. And in between that, I would either run. I mostly ran in my early 20s. And then in my mid 20s, I started walking and doing Pilates. And now in my later 20s, I'm still walking and doing Pilates. But I think having 3 sessions a week where you're doing some sort of strength and being really consistent with that is key for just like keeping your body nice or getting your body nice. And by nice, I say nice because it's whatever you want that to be. I'm comfortable in the way that I look. I'm never going to be the skinniest girl in the room, and I'm like totally fine with that. But I also like, I don't want to be overweight, and I'm not comfortable in my body when I'm overweight, which I have been overweight in the past. And so, yeah, I find that having that 3 daily exercise routine is essential. And for me, what's worked is having classes that I can go to, because I find that if I'm not booking a class, I will find an excuse to not do it consistently. Like sometimes I'll still do an at-home workout. I use this app called Oro, and I'll do maybe like one of those classes per week, 1 to 2 if I'm feeling really good. But otherwise, like I need to be going to a Pilates class. I've been going to core power classes as well. I need to have that on the schedule so that I'm actually being taken through like a proper strength routine. So if you are not someone who can properly take yourself through a strength and muscle conditioning routine, again, whether that be Pilates or weightlifting or whatever you like to do, then I really recommend that you find a class that you like. You get the membership, you pay for it, it's worth it, and you go consistently 3 times a week minimum. I do Pilates 3 times a week, and I don't care what it costs. I'm going, makes me feel good, it changed my body, I think it's worth it. The other routine is 10,000 steps a day. So when I was working in Boston, I walked to and from work, and I also ran. So like I was way getting more than 10,000 steps a day. During COVID, I had nothing to do. I feel like I was walking like 20,000 steps a day. And now in my late 20s, I hit that 10,000 steps a day in Chicago, whether it be on the treadmill or outside. 10,000 steps a day. I know that's like an arbitrary number, but it's enough movement where you feel like you've worked your body and you've moved enough throughout the day where you're not stiff, if that makes sense. So getting in your steps is essential. If you need a tracker, get one. I personally don't believe in fitness trackers. I find them to be kind of addicting and lead to like that orthorexia vibe. But if you need a tracker just so that you have an idea, do it. I just use it on my phone, although it does get warped when you walk on the treadmill because it doesn't count those steps. The last layer of health and wellness is not exercise related. It's like more wellness related, and that's reading. I think that everybody should read. If you are not in a regular reading routine, I personally am in the camp that you are missing out on a facet of life. Reading is everything to me. I love reading. I wish I started reading earlier. I went through phases in my mid to early 20s where I was reading, but I was mostly reading self-help books. No, you need to read fiction books. You need to put yourself in an imaginary environment and lose yourself in the world of a book. It is so much better than watching TV. It makes you more interesting. There is a whole world that exists in books, not only in the physical book, but also in the social media space and in the real world space of talking to other people who read. If you are not reading in 2025, no offense, I'm not going to say it because I know people will get mad, but like you need to be reading, okay? Please read. Get a Kindle, go get a library card. It doesn't matter. Pick up a freaking book and start reading. Reading changed my life. Every single night I read at least for 10 minutes, usually for more. Last night I read for like an hour and a half. Because once you get into a book, like you're just in it. It's hard to put it down. And I feel like you don't understand that until you start doing it. I know the girls listening to this who read know exactly what I'm talking about. And those who don't read are like, I want to experience that feeling, but I'm just not a reader. Everybody is a reader. You just haven't found the books that you like to read. And I do know that this is really trendy. The fantasy books, the Sarah J. Maas, ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, whatever. I was skeptical of it, okay, before I started reading it. I was never a fantasy person. I don't like fantasy movies. I'm not into magic or any of that. The books are amazing. If you eliminate even the fantasy of it all, the way they're written, the storylines they're spectacular. I've never read any books like it. You have to start reading. Please start reading. And if you want the books that I read, let me know because I can curate a list of all the books that I've read on the Kindle over the last couple of years. Moving on to this last category here, and this is focused on personal relationships, whether they be platonic friendships or romantic relationships. Okay, so all of these kind of apply. First and foremost, all throughout my 20s, I have more focused on nurturing one-on-one relationships before group relationships. I think friend groups are toxic. I don't think that friend groups are bad when you have like mature, emotionally intelligent people in those friend groups. But the dynamic of friend groups, no matter how good of friends you are, there's always weird intermixed relationships there that lead to some sort of drama at some point. So I would prefer to first nurture one-to-one relationships through like one-on-one time, spending time individually with people. And then ultimately, you curate that group of all of your friends or you're in a friend group. But I just don't really feel like friend groups and big friend groups add a lot of value, like true value to your life in your 20s. And I've learned this through doing, really. So if you're in your 20s and you want to have good quality friends, I would focus first on one-to-one relationships. So a few ways that I do that is like I will do hobbies with friends. So going on walks, going to workout classes, scheduling a weekly coffee date, texting, reaching out, initiating conversation, building a relationship through FaceTime, emotional connection. Like it doesn't have to be romantic, obviously. Like you need to have friends. But I think that you build better relationships when you focus on the individual relationship first. And that doesn't mean that you can't have, like I have a group of girlfriends who all know each other. We're all friends, but we also all have deep individual relationships with each other too. And I think that's what makes a friend group successful, as opposed to just a bunch of surface level people who come together and do social activities together, but they don't actually connect. So if you want to curate a healthy friend group, my recommendation is to focus on those one-on-one relationships first. The other layer of that too is because group dynamics change over time and groups change over time. And like you don't want your relationship with someone to be hinged on a group setting, meaning that like it would be weird if you texted that person separate versus like in a group chat. Because again, if that group changes, then you're kind of shit out of luck. So I have found all throughout my 20s that focusing on the one-to-one relationship is really the most beneficial. And now going into my 30s, I am always focused on quality over quantity in every aspect of my life, but specifically friendships, because I think that that having shallow surface level group friendships makes you actually feel a lot lonelier than having a couple much deeper connected one-on-one friendships. The other layer of this, I think, or the next thing within personal relationships or habits within personal relationships, and this has been a slow roll, is I've learned to let people walk away. Again, in my personal relationships and in romantic relationships, like if somebody doesn't want to be your friend anymore or doesn't want to be involved anymore, I'm not fighting for them. Like, goodbye. I think it's a waste of energy. You can't change people. I always say, like, think about how hard it is to change yourself. You're not going to change somebody's mind. You're not going to prove to somebody that they're missing out on you. Like if someone has made a decision that they're not interested in being involved with you in any way, like keep your pride, keep your dignity, and let them go. Because you will regret hanging on and clawing onto that because it makes you look crazy, for one. And it also makes you feel desperate, and then it makes you not like yourself. So anytime, romantically specifically, but in friendships too, like if the friendship isn't working anymore, that's it. I'm not, and it's not that I don't fight for my friends, but I'm not fighting for something that's not there, if that makes sense. Another layer of this that I think is really important is recognizing patterns in behaviors with friends and letting those patterns and behaviors speak louder than actions. I know that in your 20s, especially as you get into your later 20s, like people get busy, everyone has different lives and whatever, but like if you're noticing a consistent pattern with a friend, like they're consistently flaky, they're consistently not texting you back, they're consistently not prioritizing you, like that should be an indicator that that friend probably isn't like a lifelong friend. And then one more thing on the topic of friendships is it's okay to have different friends for different things and to level set your expectations of friends. For me, what I found I struggled with a lot when I was like developing friendships and new friendships is that I treated every friendship as like this is an everything friend. And not every friend is going to be an everything friend. Like you are going to sometimes have social friends, you're going to have workout friends, you're going to have work friends, and it's okay to have just expectations of those friends that align with those pillars of your life and not have them be like your everything friend. And I think once you kind of realize that like, okay, this is going to be my friend who I do Saturday afternoons with. This is going to be the friend that I drink with. This is going to be the friend who's always down for a Sunday workout class. A friendship can be just that. It doesn't have to be your best friend forever from every aspect of every realm, you know? So level setting expectations, I think, also leads to not being disappointed in friends, and that just helps keep a better relationship. So those are the 5 like habit systems routines. I know like friendships and relationships are less systematized, but I think that those are just good lessons to have that have made my life better as I've honed and developed and created new relationships throughout my 20s. The last layer here is just those bonus things or bonus lessons that I think will improve your life overall, and accepting these things have made my life better. First is that I stopped taking things personally. I think this is really important, and it comes from a strong sense of self. It's something that I've developed a lot faster just because of social media. But like somebody not liking you, somebody being rude to you is not really about you. Even though it feels like it's about you, it's not about you. And when you decide that you're not taking it personally, it just makes the whole thing so much easier because it's 99.9% a them problem, unless you like specifically did something to warrant a specific response, like you kiss someone's boyfriend or something. Like that's just a random example, but you know what I mean. Like if somebody's rude to you for no reason, like that's their own issue. It's not really yours. And this applies to work. You know, this applies to your personal relationships. Just in general, stop taking things personally because it's not about you. And second, and this is the most important, is that I don't associate with or ruminate on idiotic behavior. Okay. So something that I think people forget in their 20s, and this happens more in early 20s, but it does continue on in late 20s, is that we're not in college anymore, we're adults. And once you graduate college, like you are an adult, and the expectation is that you're going to act like one and mature and grow as a person. And so if somebody's acting a fool or being an idiot or gossiping or being, petty or whatever, or not able to handle a confrontation or maturely handle a confrontation, and they're just acting, for lack of a better way to put it, like an idiot, I'm out. I'm not associating with that. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not ruminating on it. I'm not trying to get answers. I'm not trying to manipulate the situation. You're either at my level or you're not in my life, and I'm not making any exceptions to that. And I think this is something that you should be ruthless about forever. The earlier you realize this, the better your life is going to get, the better your friendships are going to be. Stop associating with stupid. And I'll leave it at that. So if you enjoyed this episode, let me know. And I would love to hear from you on things that you want to hear about in future podcast episodes, let me know, or guests that you would like to have on. And with that, I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening.